Today we have a wonderful presentation. I'm very excited. We have a couple of speakers that are going to talk with us about a topic I think many of us are not familiar with, and that is Juneteenth and the history of slavery in Andover. And it's one of those topics that I don't think we've done a lot of talking about, but we need to do more talking about and come to an understanding of the Juneteenth celebration and its significance. Before I introduce the speakers, Kelly has also asked me to shamelessly plug some other things going on here at the Roth Center. We are open. We are slowly ramping up, although some days it feels like we're quickly ramping up. But next Monday, we have another event that we want to recognize, much like Juneteenth. Monday is June 21st, and that is the longest day. And the longest day has become a day to recognize and appreciate those that are living with memory loss, with dementia and Alzheimer's. Because every day is a long day when you have memory loss or you're caring for someone. So we want to recognize that day, but and celebrate those folks. So we invite everyone in the community to come back on Monday between 1 and 3. We have some wonderful things going on. We have a musician, we have snow cones, we have raffle baskets, and you can sign up to join the Walk to End Alzheimer's in October. So we hope to see you all again on Monday and going forward. So without further ado, today we have two speakers, as I said before. First, we have Mr. Ralph Bledsoe. Ralph is an Andover High School physics and chemistry teacher. He's not here to teach us chemistry and physics today.
Although I could.
He is very knowledgeable about Andover history as it relates to slavery and the abolition of slavery. Ralph is known, and after hearing him speak, I can tell he has that great speaking voice. He's known for his yearly oration of the famous Martin Luther King Jr. speech. And he does that at the Andover Baptist Church on Martin Luther King Day. So mark your calendars for January when you get to hear him speak yet again. Also with us today we have Gabrielle Womack, Gabby, and her sidekick Elizabeth, who surprised us. Gabby is a board member of the Merrimack Valley Black and Brown Voices, and she will be talking more about the Black and Brown Voices group. She is a librarian. She's not 16 years old. She looks it though.
Hey, librarians are rock stars.
They are, absolutely. So she is a librarian, a historian, and an art, I can't pronounce that word, and an inclusion ambassador at Merrimack College. So first we're going to hear from Ralph, and then we're going to hear from Gabby and Elizabeth. So let's give them a nice Roth Center welcome.
Thank you very much. I am quite excited to be here. I'm happy to discuss Juneteenth and Andover, both. I'm not a historian. I just fell into this topic by pure interest. Actually, as a quick aside, it all really started with my classes in physics and chemistry, where I want to give my kids extra credit questions. And I'm going to give you an example actually of one of the extra credit questions, and I'll have it for you for the test at the end of this. So I pulled together some interesting facts I thought about, but every time I went to make it a hardcore this and then that and this, I came up with something else to put in. So I never was really to lock it down into a solid speech. So it's really a free-flowing discussion of photos and things I'm going to bring up, okay? And the first thing I want to bring up is happy 375th anniversary to Andover. I feel that it's significant that everyone should know that. My beloved town in the Hall of Flags has its flag at the Massachusetts State House, the third flag, as in the third oldest town in Massachusetts. And speaking of the flag, I don't know that everybody knows much about what this is for, but this is Cuchimache, the person who sold Andover to John Woodbridge VI for, let's see here, 6 pounds sterling, silver, and a coat. Okay? He was the chief of the Pennacook tribe, and this all happened in 1646. I'm going to go over my topics. Topics are who am I, what are my sources, because, you know, that's what I learned, historians, they got to talk about sources, but so I'll make it quick. Blacks have always deserved emancipation. Did Andover have slaves? Oh, yeah. Andover had 2 underground railroads for sure, underground railroad stops, all right? Well, there were Andover men that fought not only in the Civil War, the Revolutionary War. Did Lincoln free all the slaves? The end of the Civil War and how Juneteenth came about. What was happening in Andover soon after that? Not in detail, but just a couple highlights, right? And then what's happening with Andover now and since then? Okay. Is that enough, you think? All right. So first of all, I teach at the high school, and I am a community member who tries to go out and do things with the community, and was fortunate enough to receive a Black Excellence on the Hill Award for my work in the Andover community with Andover Baptist Church, with Andover High School, helping Barry Feingold get elected his first time running for the state senate. And after that, I have a dream speech all over the Commonwealth of Massachusetts and in Connecticut. Okay, so now Andover High is a wonderful place where I teach physics and chemistry. It's an absolute jewel. And you can see that there's a strength in the student body when you just look at this shirt, where the students didn't want to just sit back and say, okay, COVID's here, let's do nothing. Let's step out and get PPE for people, okay? And so I really just have to push that Andover High is in the top 4% of all high schools in the United States, according to U.S. News and World Report, okay? And Massachusetts is the #1 state and has been for public education. I'm also a member of the Andover Baptist Church, and I'm actually the lieutenant of music is what I call myself. I help the music minister who is playing the organ, but I'm looking around, making sure everything's set. Anything needs to get fixed, microphones, anything, I'm on it. Somebody needs water, I go get it. You know, I run and take care of business. I want to make sure to support, well, God, okay? All right, next, who are my sources? My main source for talking about Juneteenth was from YouTube, Dr. Shanette Garrett Scott of Texas. And this doctor gave me a great rundown so I could go beat by beat through what was going on there. The Andover Townsman's article. Eamon O'Surreal, I really don't know how to say that. I don't know how to spell it either. But anyway, but he came up with a video on Salem Poor that we'll see later. The Town of Andover website has tons of history in it. And of course, the Andover Center for History and Culture. Actually, I have to go back to the town website because when there was a virtual talent show a year ago at the high school, I decided I was going to talk about the town of Andover, and it was called Water, Witches, and Wealth. And I'm getting off topic, but let's keep going, just to keep me on point. All right. Blacks have always deserved emancipation from the start. We fought for it. In the 1760s, African Americans began not only celebrating the revolution, but participating in it. I mean, here's a painting of the first person to die for the American Revolution, a man, Crispus Attucks, who was honored by Samuel Adams with a procession of his casket to Boston's Faneuil Hall, where he laid in rest for 3 days. Okay? So, just the start of America had African Americans involved right from the beginning. Next, Elaine Clemens of the Andover Center for History and Culture had an article she put in the Andover Townsman in 2012. And the bottom line is that records indicate that slave holdings in Andover were small, with most families holding 1 or 2 slaves. But the bottom line is there was slavery in Andover. Have you ever heard of the African American Andover resident, Salem Poor? He bought his own freedom. You're going to hear in a video about him. But he was also the only soldier awarded a citation by the Provincial Congress after the Battle of Bunker Hill. This photo and this larger one are part of a mural up at Andover High School. And if this was continuous, it would go out to about here, just more and more Andover information. Beautiful painting. Students painted it along with the artist and the art teacher who coordinated the whole project, but it's just a beautiful work that I walk by every day. And here's a closer picture, and I love the way they show Salem Poor with "My country, 'tis of thee" right over his head. So I have a video to show on Simon Poor that I'm going to play. Do we have speakers set up?
Yep, it should automatically go.
Okay.
It's a jarring word, one with negative connotations and one often associated with the American South. In our studies of American history, many of us have come across the names of heroes like Frederick Douglass, Sojourner Truth, and Harriet Tubman, all of whom escaped slavery in the South and went
Frederick Douglass, Sojourner Truth, and Harriet. Names and 3 stories will never do justice to the hardship.
went on to be emissaries of the African American cause. 3 names and 3 stories will never do justice to the hardship endured by millions of our fellow Americans in the era of enslavement. When we are only taught a select few names, generalizations and ignorance tend to abound. Thus, today we will be profiling the story of Salem Poor, a name with which some of you may be vaguely familiar, but a name that tends to be among those hidden histories rarely uttered in American history classes. Salem Poor was born sometime in 1743 or 1744. Shortly after his birth, he was purchased in Salem, Massachusetts, and brought back to Andover, where he was baptized in 1747 at the North Parish Church. He ended up the property of John Poor, a farm owner in Andover, Massachusetts. As is the case with most enslaved peoples, there are few details surrounding the less notable portions of Poor's life. What we do know about Poor is that he worked at a time when enslaved people in New England were able to earn income by performing labor for wages, in addition to their unpaid labor. In 1769, when Poor was in his mid-20s, he was able to do something few enslaved people could. He purchased his freedom. The price? 27 pounds. That was a considerably large sum of money at the time, just as it would be today, equating to over $3,000 in 2021. It would have taken Salem Poor many years of extra labor to save his wages and purchase his freedom. Over the next 6 years, details of Poor's life remain scarce. What is known is that in 1771, Salem Poor married Nancy Parker. Both had the shared experience of once being enslaved. Fascinatingly, Parker, a woman of Native and African ancestry, successfully sued her owners in court for her freedom. Nancy and Salem Poor continued to live in Andover at this time, with Nancy giving birth to a son named Jonas, baptized in 1776. Now we've arrived at the notable point in Poor's life. In 1775, Salem Poor left his family and joined with other Andover men by enlisting in a militia within the regiment of Colonel James Fry in the struggle against the British. Perhaps he was motivated ideologically, as many colonists were in the Revolutionary cause. Or perhaps he was drawn by the prospect of pay and adventure. Poor is best known for his presence at the Battle of Bunker Hill. On June 16th of 1775, Poor and his fellow soldiers began building a fort on top of Breed's Hill, the hill on which the Battle of Bunker Hill actually took place. The day after, the fighting commenced. Poor is remembered for his valiant actions in the battle. He is credited with killing several British soldiers, possibly including Lieutenant Colonel James Abercrombie, though accounts and conclusions are uncertain. Poor's valor, bravery, and gallantry at the battle prompted 14 officers to petition the Massachusetts House of Representatives to recommend him for his heroism. The subscribers beg leave to report to your honorable house, which we do in justice to the character of so brave a man, that under our own observation we declare that a Negro man called Salem Poor, of Colonel Fry's regiment, Captain Ames's company, in the late battle at Charlestown, behaved like an experienced officer, as well as an excellent soldier. To set forth the particulars of his conduct would be tedious. We would only beg leave to say that in the person of this said Negro centers a brave and gallant soldier. The reward due to so great and distinguished a character, we submit to the Congress. Following this battle, Poor continued to serve. He re-enlisted and served from 1776 to 1780, and during that time, he was present at Fort George and Saratoga in New York, at Valley Forge in Pennsylvania, at White Plains in New York, and at Providence in Rhode Island. The institution of slavery and its presence in the American North is something that tends to be ignored or overlooked in American history classes. This makes the story of Poor even more important. By all accounts and definitions, he is an American hero, yet he has suffered the same fate as many of those notable but not notable enough icons throughout our history. In addition, he's also a local hero. Massachusetts is the birthplace of the Revolution, and yet there is a tendency to glorify men from this Commonwealth, whose most notable accomplishments in life were not examples of their character and the ways in which they led life, but were instead exceptions which we have chosen to celebrate. That is not to say that those accomplishments should not be celebrated, but it is time that we take the initiative upon ourselves to look for those lesser-known men and women who are equally and sometimes more qualified to receive recognition.
Him just to give an example of what's going on in Andover. He's a hero, an Andover hero that I don't know that many people know about. But also in the 1890s, Andover did not have one, but at least two stops on the Underground. William Jenkins home here. Let's see, there's a there's a name up there. What is it? Gail Cross? I'm not sure. I believe she's right here. She took this picture of the Blue Limestone, I believe. And this is where the Jenkins home was.
Where the one of the stops for the Underground Railroad was. Now, what that was, these stops helped runaway slaves reach freedom by providing them with food, a quiet place to stay, and respite as they escaped the horrors of the United States of America. Another stop was the Poor Wagon Stop, and for some reason, I don't know who Don Robb is, but you know, he was the one that got this picture for us. And this started as a blacksmith shop, and it was highly successful, but also had an Underground Railroad stop in it. Okay. So then I want to talk about the Civil War beginning next. In 1861, and Andover had people that stepped up and volunteered to go out and fight for the freedom of all Americans. Here's a group of men who mustered with the 14th Massachusetts Volunteer Infantry. These were men from Andover and heroes, you could say. And for the most part, they worked in the service of guarding Washington himself and never really saw action because people didn't really get close to him. But they did have a chance because they were itching to fight. And they did have a good fight out in Spotsylvania. I also have a Civil War Congressional Award, a Congressional Medal of Honor winner, Sergeant Henry Flint Chandler, who went on to come back into Andover and live his life out. But these are the men we see that we should honor as representatives of this town that decided that they weren't just going to settle and let things go on with people enslaved. And I certainly do appreciate that. Right. Now, during the war, that started in 1861. On September 22nd, 1862, President Lincoln announced the Emancipation Proclamation for it to begin on January 1st, 1863. Though most in the country tried to suppress this news, and they had some success, it did get out. But it really had limited effect in that it really worked for the Union only, such that a vast majority of slaves were not affected by this, as they were in the states, the border states that were loyal to the Union but had slavery. And of course, the U.S. Proclamation had nothing to do with the Confederates because they considered themselves another country. Okay. But importantly is that word did slip out, and slaves did not wait around for a piece of paper or a proclamation. About 500,000 to 300,000 of the 3.5 million slaves simply ran during the Civil War. They freed themselves. They knew this war was not about some sugar-coated states' rights idea. They didn't care about states' rights. They just wanted to be free. And they knew the Civil War was all about ending slavery. So many ran to the north, not only to the north, but some ran straight to the Union lines and started free communities along with the Unions fighting the war. Okay. The war ended with Robert E. Lee surrendering in April of 1865, at Appomattox Courthouse. Over 700,000 people died in this massive 4-year civil war that was fought for one reason, the emancipation of 4 million people. But in those days, Texas was far away from the center of the fighting and most of the battle. And it took from April, when Lee surrendered, all the way till June before Texas's General Edwin Smith finally did the same in Galveston. But you have to see that Texas did not want to end slavery. In fact, Texas was away from the fighting. So many slaveholders that saw the approaching Union line brought their slaves straight to Texas to keep them as slaves. So to protect them, as it were, okay? To hide their property of human beings from the Union. This means that thousands of slaves were added to the 180,000 slaves already in Texas. And they really didn't want folks down there, at least. That was the last bastion. They didn't want them to know. But in mid-June, Major General Gordon Granger arrived with 1,800 troops to Galveston, Texas. And on 19 June, or June 19th, 1865, 2 years and 6 months after the Emancipation Proclamation was enacted, General Gordon Granger stepped onto the balcony of Aston Villa, the former headquarters of the Army of the Confederate States of America, and read General Order Number 3. The people are informed that in accordance with the proclamation from the executive of the United States, all slaves are free. This involves an absolute equity of personal rights and rights of property between former masters and slaves, and the connection heretofore existing between them becomes that between employer and hired labor. The free men are advised to remain at their present homes and work for wages. It goes on a little bit further, but that is the heart and soul of it. Some stood in disbelief. Some shouted praises to God, but most sang and danced right there on the street. It was the time to celebrate. I'm sorry. It's time to get excited. In fact, the former slave Pierce Harper recalled the events when he stated in 1937, when peace comes, they read the Emancipation Law to colored people. They spent the night singing and shouting. They wasn't slaves no more. Though I had shown the camps of those who ran for freedom, the importance of Juneteenth is that it ended the last bastion of slavery in the United States, Texas, and Texas was forced to acknowledge that humans are no longer property, and celebration was the order of the day. Emancipation was made true, though not entirely. Okay, so well, this is great, but what about Andover? You ask. I want to hear about Andover. Well, in 1865, in October, 4 months after the assassination of President Lincoln, the social justice pioneer Frederick Douglass came and gave a lecture to Andover's town house, as it was called then, now town hall. and it was entitled The Assassination and Its Lessons. There was a book on the topic of these two gentlemen. The next thing to happen is December. 13 December 1865, the 13th Amendment was ratified. And it states that neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as a punishment for crime whereof the party has been duly convicted, shall exist within the United States. Well, this left a huge black hole, or loophole, I should say. This duly convicted became a loophole because it became a practice from 1865 probably through now. I mean, I don't know, where all they do is a company owner will walk up to a judge or a policeman and say, I need 20 men. And the police will just go round them up. Just round them up. Did they do anything? No. Of course, the ones that did get caught for something actual got rounded up in there. But a lot of people that were just walking home got rounded up, put in jail. You did this. You're convicted of this crime. Boom. Go work for this company until you can pay off your debt to society. And so slavery continued, essentially. All right. Let's see here. Meanwhile, back in Andover, and a few years later, in 1869, poet and essayist Ralph Waldo Emerson gave his first lecture of 6. He was a fervent advocate of speaking out against fugitive slave laws. And I have to admit, not only do I love this quote, what lies behind you and what lies in front of you pales in comparison to what lies inside you. But my selfish reason to put him up is my grandfather, Dr. Ralph Waldo Emerson Bledsoe, MD, who that's the reason I'm called Ralph, is right there, Ralph Waldo Emerson Bledsoe, you know. And he did well. I have to tell you a quick story. He lived in Texas, and born and raised, went to medical school, became a doctor, and he found that one pharmacy was not filling his prescriptions. So he went to the pharmacy to ask why that is the case. And when the pharmacist said, excuse me one second, and went in the back, my grandfather's friend grabbed my grandfather and said, let's get out of here. They get in the car, they're driving away. The pharmacist comes out with a pistol because he was going to shoot him dead on the spot. And then what would happen? All of his friends would give him turkeys and hams in celebration of him having murdered a black man. That's how Texas was. That's how the South was. Complete disregard for humanity. But back in Andover, we have 1967. I'm moving way up, okay? I'm not going to go into a ton of detail, but it's important to mention that the town of Andover became active in civil rights movement because the Boston-based program, A Better Chance, or ABC, was founded to provide an elite education to inner city youth who were having trouble getting into colleges, etc. I'm proud that the prep schools I have worked with, Northfield, Mount Herman, and Phillips Academy, really were the pillars of founding this program. And I'm also proud that this town, Andover, where I live, the town I live in and love, okay, was the first to open an ABC house for inner city students to attend the elite Andover High School. Okay, yes. Second. Okay. Hanover, oh, thank you for straightening me out on that. Okay, let me fix this in my notes right now. Was the second.
Okay,
Okay? But,
the Hanover, New Hampshire program no longer exists. This is true. And so, Andover.
so Andover, it's the same thing. You got to understand, it's the same thing as Phillips Academy. They say they're the oldest continuous boarding school, and they are, because the other school, let's say, for example, Governor Dummer, now called Governor Academy, the founder of Phillips Academy went to Governor, you see, but Governor closed for years, see, and then opened back up. So Phillips said, anyway, that's how it goes. But it really is awesome to see that the town was so involved like that, because they didn't have to do that. No, they did not have to do that. And also, so let me talk more about this. So I'm sorry, I got so involved with talking about it. I didn't mention one of our governors was part of the ABC program. He went to Milton Academy. And here's the ABC house, a Better Chance house, right on Main Street. And here are the Andover High School students. Let's see. I've taught her, I've taught her, I've taught her. And I don't know why they didn't send me the rest of them. Okay. So, and also Andover is a place where the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King has been celebrated for the past 14 years. This is the 13th annual. This past year, we had to have a virtual celebration for the 14th annual. This is the 13th annual. So we had a virtual for the 14th annual. But this is a flyer, and I try to do my best recitation of 50 years ago and go through with the speech of I Have a Dream. And I have some success, but it's a remarkable piece of work to follow up on from King. And it's remarkable that the town of Andover has a celebration every year. I tell you, you go in any direction and ask these towns, is anybody celebrating? And get the answer, okay? And you'll know how special Andover is, okay? Let's see. But I really have to emphasize that the current popularity of Juneteenth may not have come about without mentioning the murder of George Floyd. These were the folks standing on the side of the road watching this as this gentleman from an older era of policing decided it was his power, his freedom to murder someone in front of them and dare them to do anything about it. And because of COVID-19, here the entire United States was watching this graphic injustice go on, And so what happened as a result was, like, there's the Lee statue, and there's a big George Floyd screen put up right in front of it with graffiti on it saying, come on, Lee, he was actually a rebel who fought against the United States, and we're praising him. Anyway, and so also there were protests all over the United States, in all these big cities. Everybody, Boston, Milwaukee, Louisville, you name it. But what about Andover? Yes, on June 1st last year, we were out. Sorry. I couldn't have been more proud, frankly, because the only reason they were out is to support us. And to say, we are Americans, and we don't deserve that. Sorry. And following on June 19th, here we go. There they are right there. They had a very successful Juneteenth celebration. And the thing that I felt most strongly about was a couple things. They clearly expressed that growing up in Andover left them with a feeling of being different and being treated differently. And it kind of was hurtful. And I don't know if I got that wrong. Yeah. So, you know, but I have to say that they set up a very successful celebration that was held behind Doherty Middle School. And I really hope that the massive turnout, in spite of raging COVID, this was in the middle of COVID, and all these people came out to celebrate Juneteenth. But not only that, there was a large number of white residents who spontaneously took the stage and spoke from their hearts in support of the event. You agree? Yeah, it was wonderful. It was wonderful to see. Finally, the town of Andover today will celebrate Juneteenth in two ways. One, my church, Andover Baptist, is throwing a big Juneteenth celebration on the Common from 10 to 3. And then about an hour later, the youth of the world will come out and boom, they're going to have a block party, a Juneteenth block party. And I've been telling all my kids, and they're going to come out, everybody. See, you don't even have to tell them. They just do this, and everybody knows. You know what I'm saying? And it's going to be rocking, okay? But just to be able to actually give you a sense of the strength and the power of this moment in Andover, let me just stop for a second and catch myself. Like, I got too excited, went completely off script, and I told you I'm not a historian, so let's see. Yeah. So finally, the town of Andover today, right now, celebrates Juneteenth, the day America formally shook the scourge of slavery. And while there is much to be done to end racism, your being right here now is only something to celebrate. And then you folks also at home on your computers or at work, this is something to celebrate. On this Saturday, 19 June, in the Andover Town Common from 10 to 3, I will be saying Happy Freedom Day, Happy Emancipation Day, Happy Jubilee Day, Happy June 19th, Happy Juneteenth. But if you think about it, the way people talk now, they would probably just say, instead of June 19th, they just say Happy JN. You know. So this year, the host of the Juneteenth celebration will be Pastor Lyndon Myers of Andover Baptist Church. He will be introducing everybody to Juneteenth and reading the Emancipation Proclamation. Also, there will be a town of Andover representative there. State Representative Tram Nguyen will speak. We will have Andover graduate, AHS graduate, C.J. Morse reading some original poetry. The new superintendent of Andover Public Schools, Magda Parvey, will be there. The head of Phillips Academy, Raynard Kingston, will be there. And, of course, the Andover Center for History and Culture. I'm sorry, it's out of focus. The best I could do, cutting and pasting, etc. You know, and myself. I'll be giving a condensed, no pictures discussion that will actually sound more like a speech than what I'm doing now. what I'd like to say is that in 1980, Texas was the first state to mark Juneteenth. Massachusetts also recognizes Juneteenth now. And just yesterday, the United States Senate has passed unanimously a resolution establishing June 19th as Juneteenth National Independence Day, a U.S. holiday commemorating the end of slavery. And that is timely and wonderful, you know. And I saw something on there earlier about I think it was with Salem Poor, where today is the 16th of June, and it was showing that they were getting ready for the Battle of Bunker Hill on the 16th of June, okay? And then the battle was the next day. Okay, that was an aside. All right. You know, to try to conclude this, the history of the town of Andover and Andover citizens have really had a clear mind toward looking at the world with reality as opposed to burying their head in the sand and saying, I won't believe it. You know, they won't, Andover doesn't get stuck in fantasies, okay? And there is a new commission in Andover on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And Andover's Commission of Equity and Inclusion will work to combat the realities of racism and intolerance in Andover by supporting programs, initiatives, education, outreach, policies, and institutional change which will contribute to the inclusive Andover, to an inclusive Andover, a community which embraces tolerance, inclusiveness, and respect for all. Now, that becomes the end of my talk, and I just want to show you some of the members on this committee. You can look it up easily yourself, but you see a wide range of individuals that are quite professional, including one of my students. And, you know, we have pastors, and this gentleman here from the Beth Israel in Andover, he was down south, and he was a lawyer in Birmingham, Alabama, and started the Southern Poverty Law Center, okay? And he's in Andover, okay? So, yeah, almost done. So he works with me. He is the science department head for languages and police. And that's really, finally, I'm really at the end of what I have to say. And thank you very much.
Coming on up, we got double the prize.
So I am Elizabeth Walthengren. I am one of the co-founders of Merrimack Valley Black and Brown Voices. This is Gabby. Gabby's on the board of directors. She also, as Jane said, works at Merrimack College as a historian and librarian, which is why I asked her to help me with this. So I figured she has a lot of good knowledge in there. But yeah, we'll get through it.
So just for some background information on me and some of my research, when it comes to historian, I have a master's in history and a master's in library science, a focus on archives, so that's old documents and such. My focus within history is on race within the United States, so the history of race, and specifically racial passing, so black to white racial passing. This is in connection with the U.S. Census, so that's a lot of my research has to do with that. Which is why Liz thought this was a good idea. Is this the, I believe it's this one. If you put this in here. Okay, cool. So we'll get started here.
Maybe.
No, it's just
Oh, maybe
the
the
up,
arrow.
down button. See the
Oh,
down?
okay.
Gotcha.
Oh, no.
All right. All right, so I'm gonna have Liz explain what MVBDV is, since we're wearing our shirts today.
Yes, so Merrimack Valley Black Women Voices, as you can see, we are a nonprofit organization. We support the Black, Indigenous, and people of color that live in the Merrimack Valley, so that ranges from Amesbury basically all the way over to Billerica. We wanted to create a safe space for people of color in the community to be able to share resources, learn about the community for anybody entering in the community who wants to move here as well. And we do a lot of stuff, as Ralph said about our Juneteenth event last year. We also were inspired by the death of George Floyd, so we hosted a vigil first, and then Juneteenth was our second event, and we've kind of spiraled from there into what we are now.
All right, so we've already heard what mostly Juneteenth is, but I wanted to talk about the fact that this information is coming out again in a book called On Juneteenth by Annette Gordon-Reed. She's a historian who's written about this, and she's from Galveston, Texas. So she talks about her experience in Texas, the creation of Juneteenth, and how her family has celebrated that, the good and the bad of how she feels about this. So it's a really great book, short read too. In her description of it, she does talk about the 2,000 Union troops showing up in Galveston Bay to state this decree. However, she also mentions that a lot of the folks there already knew about the Emancipation Proclamation. It was just not a safe thing to then hop out, and be like, guess what, I'm free, I wouldn't have gone so well, so they had to wait it out until the troops showed up. They didn't have that support to be able to do that. So if you can just imagine knowing that technically you're free, but nobody's there to back that up yet, so you have to play along, until that time comes. That's rough. That's rough. Oops, there we go. So a common misconception that Ralph brought up also was that a lot of people think that the Emancipation Proclamation freed all the slaves. So another misconception is that during this time frame, a lot of people think that the North did not have slaves. This is not true either. A lot of places like Connecticut and New York actually had what they called gradual emancipation. So this would have forced people to not get their freedom until about 19 years old. Sometimes it took longer than that. And other times it led to situations where they had to sue for their freedom. So the North wasn't exactly without slaves at the time, and neither were the border states. So this did not affect them. They were still there during the Civil War. So they were not actually freed until 1865 either. That's another situation that people don't talk about. Another issue that arose was that Abraham Lincoln didn't actually want to do this when the war first started. Yes, he knew that they were fighting for states' rights that specifically had to do with slavery. They wanted the right to keep slavery. However, he was holding back because he was nervous about the idea of arming Black men to have them in the war. So what he did was hold back for a while, but when he saw that England might start to support the Confederacy, he then decided, okay, we're going to let them fight now and make this Emancipation Proclamation. So he comes out with this declaration, right? And then England says, okay, we don't want to support the South. Now that we know that they're into slavery and we have just abolished slavery, we're not going to be supporting this officially, So they back off, thus helping the Union win this war. So why celebrate Juneteenth? So we heard that in Texas they celebrate it. So why is everybody celebrating it now? So we already know that last year kind of kicked it off. But another thing that kind of made us realize that this should be a holiday for the whole country is that our freedom as Black folks was not included when the Declaration of Independence was signed. When July 4th became a national holiday, that did not include us.
No, it
And Frederick Douglass gave a speech about this, and people learned about that. What is the 4th of July to the slave? What is the 4th of July to the Black man? And the reason why this is such an important thing is because many activists have proclaimed in the past, none of us are free until we're all free. So this is not a holiday that is just about Black folks being free. It's a holiday about the entire country. However, I do want to preface this by saying this holiday celebrates the last day of chattel slavery, slavery that had to do with owning another human being. This does not stop the enslavement with the prison system. This does not stop the enslavement that came from, what's it called? That came from what was kind of like a forced labor where you would force people to stay on your property, pay them very little, only enough to be able to buy their supplies to farm the land and such. And yeah, so they started indentured servitude, but there was another phrase that this is specific to, but basically, sorry, what was that? Sharecropping, yeah.
Thank you.
Great job. Yeah, so sharecropping is another form. That's another form of enslavement, and that also didn't stop until I'd say the 80s, I believe.
1980s or 1880s?
1980s. Yeah. There are some folks who passed away recently who still had stories about escaping the plantation, about still being in this system for a very long time. So a lot of folks are like, this happened a long time ago, but the woman who I last heard of giving a speech on this could have been my grandmother. You know, so it's not that long ago, and that's why we have to keep on remembering it. So how do we celebrate? We have a ton of different ways, and there are so many more aside from just this. I suggest learning more about Black history. Share what we've learned. Share with your family, with your friends, whoever this topic comes up with. It's really good to share that info. Support Black-owned businesses. We talk about this because a lot of the times the folks who have been affected by this, including the civil rights movement beforehand and Jim Crow, a lot of us don't have what would be called generational wealth. And so we have a situation where a lot of us struggle to have businesses that are sustained, that have the financial backing. So then we support Black businesses for that.
What Tulsa speaks to that, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So MPBBB actually has a section on our page that has featured a lot of businesses by BIPOC people, so it's Black, Indigenous, people of color. These are all folks who have volunteered to be on this registry. So if you want to find them, there's a section on our website for that.
It's an interactive map, so you can search by like type of business that you're looking for. You can search in a certain area, and we are continuously adding businesses as we learn about them to the map, so it's ever changing. So definitely check it out.
It's very cool website.
Thank you. Yes. There's also a marketplace that we tend to do month to month. Do we have another one coming?
Yes, we have one on June 27th in Haverhill. So it runs the same way as the farmers market, but all of the vendors are Black and brown owned businesses from the area. We had one at South Church in May.
June 27th?
June 27th, yes.
We have a lot
Sunday
of
after Father's Day.
So usually shirts are on sale if you're
Yes.
looking for that. With shirts, all kinds of stuff. And another way to celebrate would be celebrate with us. Celebrate on Saturday. So we'll be on 40 Whittier Court. Yeah, we're 5 to 8.
So the event that Ralph was talking about that the Baptist Church is running is technically a separate event, so that will be kind of more of a daytime event from 10 to 3, and then we will be from 5 to 8 behind at the field behind us.
Yep.
Now, can old people go to that?
Of course,
Anybody can go.
You know, block parties.
We got a lot of fun things. We'll have food. We have a bouncy house. Everybody wants to bounce. We'll have stage changing, music. We'll have performers. So it'll be a fun event. Both will be. Yeah. Morning and day. So whichever one you choose to go to, you're not going to miss out on a good time.
Yes, and either way, you're going to want to keep up with us on what the events are coming up because we always have something, and we're having a lot of events in the works coming up August.
Yep.
I don't remember. We'll probably continue with the markets in the fall, so there's going to be a lot of stuff coming up, and it happens pretty quickly.
It does.
Actually, could I ask you what this symbol is? What is this?
This is the flag for Juneteenth. So it's the star there in the middle. So I just put this as a decorative thing, you know, to add to our slides. I'm got the eye for this. So if anyone has any questions, we can take those now.
Yeah, wasn't happy to answer any questions.
Yeah. Yeah.
Could you explain how you came up with that?
With the flag?
Yes.
Oh, so that's the Juneteenth flag as like
From Galveston.
From Galveston. So that was the emancipated slaves came up with that flag. So that is like the official Juneteenth flag nationally, not just.
I have one slide.
Yeah, but
It's
about that.
just the flag alone,
Yeah.
if you don't mind me stepping in here. And, all right, here we go. So, wait, that's the wrong one. Yeah, that's what you guys do. Hold on. I'll get it. Oh yeah, over here. It's there. Okay, I have to do this.
There it is.
Okay, so it has the date. It has a horizon, so that you can see that we're going somewhere. It's the slaves saying, red, white, and blue are the colors of all Americans. All the slaves were Americans, okay? And making that clear. And I didn't hear about the star. I'm sorry, I didn't get everything.
I believe it was their version of taking the American flag and making it their own. From what I've read on the Juneteenth flag.
Probably Texas stars.
Yeah, it has to do with the Texas star as well.
Everything's bigger.
Everything's bigger in Texas.
Yeah, exactly. The holidays, the way that they celebrated the holiday in Texas originally had to do with cookouts, family get-togethers, big bands, stuff like that. They now have parades, and they will crown a Miss Juneteenth each year, so that's really cute. And they have floats and everything. It's adorable.
We'll get there. We're not there yet, but maybe next year we'll go bigger.
I am jealous. I will say. Yeah, it's a huge deal over there. We're just catching up, but at least now the nation can also get involved, and everyone's learning more.
And you know, one thing I want to add to all of this is when you go to look up Black history, you're not looking up Black history, you're looking up American history. This is part of us. Every time I go and read about Washington, I might as well read about Booker T. Washington, because they're all Americans and we're all fighting for the same thing, you know?
Yeah. So if any folks are still interested in more historical information or anything from my field or anything, I have a website called bookishafrolatinas.com. This website, I have sections that have resource guides that have to do with Black history, women's history, all kinds of stuff, book recommendations, and I also have a section specifically about racial passing. So that has to do with the films, the books, everything that I've used for my research would be found there.
Racial passing, what do you mean?
Black to white passing. So when folks who were Black or of African ancestry were light enough to pass as a white folk.
Yeah. Well, my
so
mother was very light, and she refused to get in the sun.
Yep.
She stayed away from that sun.
Yeah, I have a whole presentation on there as well about the same thing as I wrote this for my thesis. Actually, you were there for my presentation.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming. So you already know this stuff.
So you're a doctor? You're a doctor?
No, I have a master's. Everyone wants to be a good doctor. But, you know, I'm not about like trying to give myself more work than I already have.
Right.
Yeah, I do a little too much.
Does anybody have any other questions? Yeah.
Would you elaborate a second on your doctorate?
On my master's?
Yeah.
Yeah, my master's degree. Yeah, for my master's, I went to Simmons College. I was there for a dual degree, so it's library science and history. The history part of it, my focus was on information I found out about my own family inadvertently, where I wrote my thesis about my great-grandfather, who had been passing for white for employment in Philadelphia. So I started with that, uncovered a whole kind of a situation where I realized that his racial passing had something to do with the United States Census taking out a mixed race category in 1930. There used to be a mixed race category before that, but there were a lot of people passing for white, and a lot of newspapers were blowing this up. So some folks started getting scared, and a lot of officials were trying to push the Census Bureau to change this. Ultimately, they do change it. They tried to change the Mexican classification, but that didn't work out so well because we had a treaty with them. So they had to change it back. But for us, yeah, they changed everybody who was formerly listed as mulatto to Negro or Black after that. Unless you pass for white enough for nobody to know, then you could pass permanently and be white. That meaning you wouldn't be able to find your ancestors after that. So that cuts off your family tree, and then you're kind of lost. So that was what my research was about.
And you do lectures?
Yeah, I do talk. Yeah. Yep, I do talk. I do lectures. I do book clubs. All kinds of stuff. Yeah.
So we have to be on our board. A plethora of information.
I should have been calling you.
Yeah, I'm not dressed up in my usual garb, but I'm usually referred to as the Mrs. Frizzle of the library.
Yes.
because I dress up with like the skirts,
She's awesome outfit.
I'm wearing B-themed dresses, ice-themed skirts, all kinds of stuff. But, yeah.
What library is it?
Oh, Merrimack, the Quaid Library.
Merrimack College.
Yeah.
Oh, Merrimack, yes.
Yes. Yep. It's a cute place.
What was your website?
Bookish Afro-Latina. So I can also send this information to you so you can share it. Yeah, it out. Absolutely. But if you want to see the website real quick, I can pull it up. I can do a quick thing.
Also, if anybody's interested in t-shirts, we do have them for sale on our website, and they will be at our Juneteenth event as well.
There you go.
Like
I'm excited.
You just slide it to the right.
Gonna look over second on June too.
I'll let you read.
So the Juneteenth event is on June 19th, and then on the back is our personal slogan that we have for our nonprofit. But these are the shirts that we came out with last year. The colors are the Pan-African colors to commemorate African culture mixed with the African American culture. That's what most African Americans are. And since we don't know exactly our exact lineage back, we're going to celebrate it all.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Is that, tell me about is that a fist on top?
Yeah, so this on top.
It is a
And then
Pan-African
the red and green are.
So they're the Pan-African colors, so.
Yeah, they're just little pink splatters on the
Yeah, they're pink splatters.
Probably.
Flash.
Yeah, this is my website here. And I have this section, whoops, going the wrong way, here we go. The section here has my resources, writing and casting information. I do some events and some talks, and I also do book reviews. So that's the latest book reviews. I do all kinds. And then I also interact with folks on Facebook and Instagram and such. So I'm all over the place, kind of, which is why I was saying I don't have time for a PhD right now. A little busy. And yeah, so that's one page, and there's more about me on the website as well. If you all want to check that out.
I can also show you our interactive map if you guys want to see that.
Yeah.
Scroll it up for a second, scroll it up for just a second. Who is that? Keep going, keep a little bit higher. Who's that beautiful woman right there?
Me with lipstick.
And no mask.
And Grandma was very particular about the lipstick situation, so. You do a quick Google, that pops up immediately. Just want to show you how easy it is.
So this is our lovely website. So if you go to Black Owned, it'll bring you to the business directory. Oh, sorry. So if you want to support us, we do have a free COVID self-care store. It's running out of Lawrence, and we try to support the community for anybody who can't get access to any sort of toiletry supplies. We do have a store. We are taking donations. They don't have to be monetary donations. They can be physical, actual donations of products. We always like that. So if you go on our website, you can see, and you can click to learn more, and it will tell you all about our store. But specifically, what I do. There we go. So you can add that, if you know anybody that has a Black business, you can add that to the business map, or we can go to, so this is the full map. Sorry, I didn't scroll up that far. But it will tell you what businesses are in which town. You can
14 in Andover.
yes.
Yeah.
You're seeing that word?
Could you write out that survey that's blocking the map?
Yeah, we got the survey here.
There we go.
Yeah.
So that has all of the businesses. They're all color coordinated by business type, which you can see here. And then you can see whatever category that you'd like to see. And it will bring up, like if we bring up food and drink, it'll bring up all the food and drink places in the area. You can add commercial home repair, add retail. Yeah, thank you.
Still expanding.
Still expanding, yeah. And it tells you the number of businesses in each category as a total as well. And like I said, you can search by town, back up at the top. So yeah, and we go beyond Merrimack Valley, because like kind of towards Blue Burn is a little bit beyond Merrimack Valley, and we are always adding. We want this list to be able to include all of Massachusetts eventually. You see, we got one up in New Hampshire as well, so we like to. Yeah, we're bordering a little bit.
I mean, technically,
Like right on the line.
Yeah, right? That's Merrimack Valley.
It's passing.
Passing, exactly. And then we also have it in an Excel sheet as well if the interactive map is a little too much for people, which we understand it can be. And then also you can find out any of our events and what we have going on for the year. That was our Juneteenth event last year. So that's myself here on the left, that's Bria and Mayara, who are my also co-founders. But yes, this is our block party event. Last year, this is all about our market for the next market. And we have, announce our other dates and locations later on this month. And then we have we have 2 retreats that we'll have going on, and we did a bunch of Black History events as well. So if you want to keep up with what we're doing, that's where you can do it. And also shop here, and all of our initiatives and what we do goes under MBB Cares, and you can also contact us there. And donate and support in any way, because we have a volunteer list. We're always taking volunteers for any of our events. We always appreciate anybody who wants to come out and help us. So yeah, thank you guys.